and Avoiding a Money Crunch, W, by Judy Capco. Key insight. Successful growth and financial management require planning for the future and monitoring progress. You have a cash flow crisis and don't know how to fix it. These were the words of Marcia Bradford, MD, the senior doctor of Evergreen Women's Center, when she called our office. Despite a high demand for its services, the practice was struggling with finances, and the physicians were in a panic. The practice was leveraged to the max and not prepared to handle further financial obligations. Evergreen's financial woes were felt throughout the organization, creating quite a stir. No one was monitoring the income and expense trends, and there was never enough money to pay the bills. Through the grapevine, staff members heard about the money problems and were feeling uneasy. After a couple of payroll checks bounced, some of the staff began to bail. The stability and future of the practice were in question. They grew too fast. Our rigorous investigation soon revealed that Evergreen Women's Center was a victim of its own success. The center was started by Dr. Bradford 3 years prior and appeared to be an immediate success, adding 2 physicians within the first year. By the end of the second year, Evergreen hired 2 nurse practitioners. Dr. Bradford was planning to offer a partnership to the other physicians, but had to get the finances in order first. With the current state of affairs, this wasn't possible, and physician confidence in the practice was waning. This was a major concern for Dr. Bradford. Evergreen Women's Center couldn't get a handle on its growth or practice finances. It took money to expand the practice and meet patient demand, but seeing more patients wasn't providing the revenue required to meet financial obligations. Dr. Bradford recently secured a lease on a second office, but Evergreen's current financial situation prevented it from equipping and opening the office. The practice was about to recruit a 4th physician when Dr. Bradford put on the brakes and called our office. In addition to typical operating expenses, there were financial obligations for capital investment. More capital expenditures were on the horizon for the new office, and Evergreen was about to borrow more money just to keep it afloat. Evergreen needed a financial recovery plan and needed it fast. Checking out the numbers. To give Evergreen the help it sought, it was critical to get a clear understanding of the financial picture and what interventions would be required to get Evergreen on solid ground. We needed to see how revenue was flowing in and out of the business and examine key financial performance indicators. Standard financial reporting processes were not in place, so data needed to be collected from various sources and pulled together. This in itself turned out to be quite a challenge. When we asked Dr. Bradford what financial reports she looked at each month, she expressed frustration. The practice management system generated many reports, but no one was looking at them. Dr. Bradford had lots of data, but lacked sound financial information about the practice. Cheryl Alexander, the practice administrator, was in charge of finances, but told Dr. Bradford she didn't have time to look at the monthly reports, let alone analyze them. Cheryl simply knew that the amount of money collected each month was not enough to cover Evergreen's expenses. She cared deeply about the practice and was losing sleep over the state of financial affairs. We used annual financial statistics on OBGYN practices compiled by the National Society of Certified Healthcare Business Consultants Inc. and Medical Group Management Association MGMA to conduct a comparative financial analysis of Evergreen Women's Center. The revenue cycle. It was important to begin with a look at the charges, receipts, adjustments, and accounts receivable /R for the practice to find out if Evergreen was collecting what should be expected based on other OBGYN group practices across the nation. These comparisons would help determine if revenue recovery strategies could be implemented to pump up cash flow. The first red flag was obvious. This practice's charges and adjustments were higher than the average for its peers, but its receipts were dismal. Figure 1. The practice was collecting only 48% of its charges, as opposed to average collection rates of 56, 8% reported by Intric and 63, 8% reported by MGMA. If Evergreen's collection rate was 63, 8%, it would have earned nearly $230,000 per physician in additional income during the previous year, an amount that would have provided considerable relief to the present financial situation. $1,600,000, $1,400,000, $1,200,000, $1 million, $800,000, $600,000, $400,000, $200,000, 111, Evergreen, MGMA. Charges, receipts, adjustments. Figure 1. Productivity comparisons. Evergreen Women's Center's productivity performance comparison per full-time equivalent MD. MGMA equals Medical Group Management Association, Intric equals National Society of Certified Healthcare Business Consultants. Evergreen Women's Center's adjustments contractual allowances were 54% of charges compared with an average of 45. 6% reported by Intric and 42. 6% reported by MGMA. This is usually an indicator of inappropriate adjustments, poor performing contracts, or an unusually high fee schedule charge master. But we already knew that the fee schedule was only slightly higher than its best paying contract. We needed to dig into the data, but we strongly suspected that the billing team was struggling, impacting collections. It became apparent that Evergreen's billing department was in distress. The data entry, billing, and collection staff members were inundated because of the rapid growth. Systems were not in place to handle the growth in volume. Work was coming to them faster than they could handle it. Claim submission was delayed by as much as 30 days due to the high volume, and, according to a frustrated staff, there was no time to follow up on claims. To top it off, many claims were being rejected because the patient demographics were incomplete or inaccurate. These issues contributed to a /R growth that was far above specialty averages as exhibited in Table 1, more than 50% above the average OBGYN practice. Evergreen's money was on the books instead of in the bank. Table 1. Accounts receivable details for Evergreen versus specialty benchmarks of Evergreen's overhead compared with a 27.8% average reported by Intric and 36.3% reported by MGMA. Staffing costs and efficiency required Evergreen's immediate attention, compared with industry averages. Rent was higher for Evergreen as well, suggesting it would be important to be more productive to increase income and utilize space to generate additional revenue where appropriate. Table 2. Evergreen's highest expenses versus industry average percentage of receipts. Description: Evergreen, /R% aged 90 days, 34 days in /R, 63. Description: Evergreen, Inc., MGMA. Staffing staff benefits, 3924307386. 3 Inc., MGMA Rent 9, 5.8, 6.6, N/A, 18.06, Malpractice Insurance, 6, 6.4, 5.3, 48, 39, 41. Combined total, 614048.2. Other operating expense, 17, 20.8, 11.5. Total practice operating expense, 78, 60.8, 59.7. /R equals accounts receivable. MGMA equals Medical Group Management Association. Intric equals National Society of Certified Healthcare Business Consultants. On the back end, when payments came in, there was a rush to get the money deposited. Payments were not scrutinized before they were posted, and not enough time was dedicated to analyzing claims to be sure they were adjudicated properly before adjustments were posted. There were instances when the billing staff was inadvertently adjusting off balances inappropriately, resulting in lost revenue to the practice. This cost Evergreen plenty. Expense control. A review of the top expenses for OBGYN practices reveals that 4 expense categories account for the majority of expenses, as shown in Table 2. Staffing expense and staff benefits alone account for 46%. MGMA equals Medical Group Management Association. Intric equals National Society of Certified Healthcare Business Consultants. Total operating expenses average slightly more than 60% of receipts as reported by Intric and close to 60% as reported by MGMA. Unfortunately, Evergreen Women's Center's expenses were far higher, an alarming 78% of gross income. This excessive overhead expense left Evergreen with only 22% of its gross income to pay the physicians and pay down the debt. It wasn't enough. Expenses were killing this practice. The infrastructure. The review revealed an administrative vacuum, a large contributor to Evergreen's problems. Dr. Bradford was a respected leader and was, without question, the driving force behind the practice's growth and community presence. However, the management structure under her was weak. Throughout the hierarchy, there were no clear expectations and no accountability. There was little delineation of duties and responsibilities, beginning with the administrator all the way through the support staff. Too much was being expected of Cheryl, the administrator. Her role needed to be clearly defined and designed to utilize her talents. She had a strong financial background and was devoted to the practice. Her analytical skills made her a fine candidate to handle the practice finances, but she needed direction and structure. Cheryl preferred working with finances and was frustrated by the other responsibilities that seemed to sabotage her ability to focus on the financial picture. It was easy to see why Cheryl was unable to dedicate time to performing financial analysis. She was bombarded with day problems that she didn't have the time to deal with, and her workload was unmanageable. She was trying to handle the finances and practice administration while being pulled into crisis situations. In addition, the physicians continually called upon her to handle minor projects. With proper planning, it was reasonable to assume that many of these projects could be delegated to other staff members. Staffing. Staff growth was rapid and resulted in staffing levels above the norm. Table 3. No hires were brought on into poorly defined roles, which meant the added value of these staff members was limited. If one department said it needed help and couldn't manage the workload, another staffer was recruited without first analyzing efficiency or work processes to confirm the actual need. Not only was this a financial concern, it represented a loss of control and was a source of frustration throughout the organization. Table 3. OBGYN Group Practice Staffing Benchmark Comparatives. Evergreen, Inc. MGMA, Organization, Staff per FT Provider, 6142945 FT equals Full-Time Equivalents, MGMA, Medical Group Management Associations, Inc. equals National Society of Certified Healthcare Business Consultants. There were no written job descriptions. Without a clear delineation of duties, there was no way to know what was expected of staff members. In addition, no measurable standards were set, making it difficult if not impossible for employees to know if they were doing a good job. This also compromised the ability to measure productivity at every level. The best performers were not being recognized and there were no consequences for underperformance. How decisions were made. Planning was inadequate, resulting in poor decision-making. The practice was reacting to circumstances rather than acting on information. It seemed Dr. Bradford was always called upon to intervene when problems required a management decision. The practice resorted to continual crisis management. This was both inefficient and costly to the practice. The organizational chart was flat, drawing too few people into authoritative decision-making positions. There were only 3 levels on the organizational chart: physician/owner Dr. Bradford, administrator Cheryl Alexander, and everyone else, 27 total staff. This flat structure was choking Dr. Bradford and Cheryl. It contributed to the loss of control, poor decision-making, and inadequate management resources. Cheryl did not meet regularly with Dr. Bradford to discuss emerging issues and concerns. At the same time, Dr. Bradford did not meet with the other physicians or include them in any of management's decisions. There were no staff meetings to keep staff connected, to provide support among staff members in different departments, or to communicate information about the practice. Information was often disseminated through informal channels. For example, when only one staff member was told about a change that impacted an entire department and was left to his or her own discretion to relay information to other employees. This approach to communication was wide open to subjective interpretation. Often sensitive information told to one person in confidence ended up in the rumor mill, causing considerable distress and confusion. The final diagnosis. Although Evergreen's problems seemed overwhelming, once the situation was thoroughly explored, 6 major contributors to the practice's state of affairs were identified. 1. No clear direction. 2. Lack of planning. 3. Inadequate management infrastructure. 4. Poor use of resources. 5. Lack of financial management and analysis. 6. Undisciplined decision-making. Addressing these factors was essential to getting the practice back on course. No pain, no gain. Immediate interventions were required and tough decisions needed to be made to help this practice survive. This required an aggressive survival plan, pumping up the revenue and cutting unnecessary expenses. It included a plan to adjust staffing to redistribute the workload and some temporary pay cuts. Dr. Bradford's commitment to the practice and loyalty to staff and patients made it difficult for her to accept this reality. But it was time to put emotions aside. Efforts focused on stopping the flow of red ink, strengthening the administrative arm of the practice, and developing effective methods to monitor critical financial data. This was a challenge that required both a swift, decisive plan and the support of management and staff. Dr. Bradford was ready to listen to her advisors and do what was necessary to save the practice. Turnaround strategies. The key components for a successful turnaround included responding to critical data, defining expectations, eliminating waste and duplication, implementing and adhering to a budget, planning effectively and improving decision-making, developing a skilled leadership team, and improving communication throughout the organization. Interim leadership team. It was critical to recruit an administrator with the leadership, organizational, and business talents essential to oversee the practice's operations and business performance. This could easily take 3 to 4 months. In the meantime, Dr. Bradford agreed to have our consulting team provide interim leadership services. The consulting team was charged with the reorganization, leading the financial turnaround and implementing sound financial strategies. Cheryl was reassigned to the position of staff accountant, which freed her to provide the consultants with regular status reports on practice finances. She was relieved to have someone else assume responsibility for handling the practice's administrative burdens and decision-making during this critical transition. The success of the turnaround depended on selecting a project coordinator to work closely with the consultants to coordinate staff assignments and be our communication link. Angela Lopez, a lead biller, was a logical choice. She had previous management experience, possessed organizational and leadership skills, and was respected by the staff. She was totally committed to Evergreen and was invaluable as the point person. The first response to critical data was placing an immediate freeze on hiring and capital spending, followed by an analysis of staff duties and performance to increase output. A financial recovery plan was developed to maximize resources and expedite billing and collection activities. The approach to getting this practice on a sound financial footing focused on 5 basic objectives. 1. Maximize physician and staff productivity. 2. Improve charge capture. 3. Optimize revenue recovery. 4. Reduce expenses. And 5. Control capital outlay. We prepared project timelines outlining responsibilities of the consultant team and the staff accounting figures 2 and 3. These timelines were reviewed with Dr. Bradford, the other physicians, Cheryl, and Angela. It was important for each of these people to understand the goals and the commitment necessary to move the practice through difficult times. Without their support, it would be a difficult road to recovery. The action plan. Defining expectations, eliminating waste and duplication, implementing and adhering to a budget, planning effectively and improving decision-making, developing a skilled leadership team, and improving communication throughout the organization. Interim leadership team. It was critical to recruit an administrator. Action. Select project coordinator. Deadline. Consultant team/interim administrator. Purpose. Action. Staff accountant. Deadline. Purpose. Immediate. Provide coordination and support of required actions. Recruit and hire new administrator. 60 days. Improve leadership and organizational function. Assign staff members to complete job description questionnaire for creating new job descriptions. Collect workload data. 3 days. Understand current workflow. 10 days. Establish and enforce collection criteria. 7 days. Improve cash flow. Assign billing supervisor and establish collection criteria/goals. Immediate. Empower and mentor billing staff. Evaluate staffing needs to improve efficiency. Prepare weekly cash flow report. Prepare weekly agent receivable report with graphic presentation. Prepare monthly graphs productivity reports by MD/provider. New and established patient visits by provider. Procedures and deliveries. Referral sources. Accounts receivable management. 7th of each month. Every Monday. Improve communication of financial position. Monitor trends. And allow for sound financial planning. Establish charge reporting and claim submission time limits. 7 days. Tighten revenue cycle. In the end, everyone wanted the same things: direction, structure, stability, and financial viability. The staff and physicians understood this would not be easy to achieve and would require their support. Through mutual respect, flexibility, and building a solid foundation, progress continued at a reasonable pace and confidence in the practice was eventually restored. Before the action plan was implemented, 2 meetings were scheduled to discuss the dire state of affairs, communicate the need for immediate recovery actions, and solicit support. This required careful and deliberate planning to ensure the physicians and staff would have hope for the future of the practice and commit to the changes required to achieve viability for a practice that appeared to have a dynamic future if only it could get its finances under control. These meetings set the record straight and truncated the distorted grapevine approach to communication that previously relayed inaccurate information, resulting in fear and diminished confidence in management's ability to solve major problems. It was time to lay the cards on the table and tell everyone about the practice's financial situation and let them know how it would be resolved. This was particularly difficult for Dr. Bradford, as she was not accustomed to sharing information or involving staff in the practice's business affairs. It required several management meetings to agree on what information needed to be shared with the employees, in fairness to them and to obtain their support. We wanted the staff to know the situation was serious, but that a recovery plan was in place. The consultant team knew there was hope for the future, and this was the picture we intended to paint. The first meeting was with the physicians. Once they understood the gravity of the practice's finances, they agreed to a request to reduce their salaries by 10% for 6 months, with a payback of 6 equal payments beginning in 24 months. We further explained that the goal was to have the practice on sound financial footing within 12 to 18 months so partnership agreements could be pursued. The physicians were promised that they would receive monthly reports to keep them abreast of the practice's financial performance. The second meeting included the entire staff. In this meeting, we explained the practice's position and the necessity to reassign some positions and lower staffing costs. We asked people to consider the option of reducing their work hours temporarily or volunteering to be furloughed. Immediately following this meeting, each staff member met individually with Dr. Bradford and one of the consultants to discuss his or her own situation and options. We explained that each position would be reevaluated and structured so that productivity could be measured and we could capitalize on the individual strengths of staff members. This entire process was difficult and emotional for Dr. Bradford, but was essential to move the practice out of the rat. Several employees resigned, but for the most part, staff members wanted to support Evergreen Women's Center and were willing to reduce their hours temporarily, roll up their sleeves, and become part of the solution. This was encouraging. The results. During the 3 months it took to obtain a top-notch administrator, efforts focused on improving communication, building a strong infrastructure, stressing accountability, and improving finances. Once the new administrator was in place, progress was rapid. Within 12 months, the financial recovery plan was complete and the practice was able to begin repaying the physicians for the initial 6-month cutback in pay. During the implementation of the turnaround, some difficult business decisions were made. These decisions were essential to getting Evergreen Women's Center on solid ground and accomplishing the stated objectives. Improved leadership structure and communication. See toolbox forms for a sample organizational chart. Monthly monitoring of critical financial data. Increase collections, reduce debt, improve cash flow, control growth, increase physician and staff productivity, higher physician and staff satisfaction. The entire recovery process was valuable in teaching all the physicians some sound business principles for managing the practice and monitoring financial performance. Evergreen Women's Center achieved group viability, improved operating performance, and financial stability. The next step, the old saying, failure to plan is planning to fail, was a reality Evergreen Women's Center didn't want to experience again. 15 months after the practice reorganization began, the physicians and management team participated in a strategic planning session. Together, they clarified future goals for the practice and determined the financial resources and strategies required to achieve the stated goals. This was accomplished through market research, demographic analysis, and a better understanding of Evergreen's market strengths and weaknesses. The strategic planning process included an examination of potential opportunities within the community to expand the practice and the services Evergreen had to offer. At the same time, it was important to explore possible obstacles, including what potential or existing competitors and market conditions might pose a threat to Evergreen's ability to draw on its strengths. Examining these issues was critical to developing a realistic strategic plan. At last, Evergreen Women's Center understood the importance of strategic planning to prepare for the future and guide its actions. The physicians and the administrator of Evergreen Women's Group closely examined their options before making decisions that would affect their future. In the end, the strategic plan was designed to serve as Evergreen Women's Center's blueprint for the future. Within 18 months of Dr. Bradford's first call to our office, she was able to offer the other physicians partnership into a practice with a stable future. Evergreen Women's Center now takes a methodical, carefully crafted approach to growth. Their future is more predictable and far more secure. Evergreen Women's Center is a fine-tuned practice. Without question, its solid infrastructure, approach to decision-making, and cautious regard for managing finances makes it a top-performing practice. Organizational discipline, the foundation for long-term growth. The staff members at Evergreen Women's Center have continued to work together effectively to achieve their shared goals. Each year, during the strategic planning retreat, they review goals and accomplishments and develop new goals based on the state of the practice, competitive factors, and the changing demands brought on by healthcare reform. Evergreen understands the importance of having a top-notch leader at the helm, recognizing the importance of good communication, and valuing the staff's contribution. Staffing levels are above the national average, but they contribute to the providers being productive and generating far more revenue. They have learned that having the right people do the right jobs and paying them what they are worth results in high revenue and increased profit. They also realize the power of strategic planning to guide the practice in achieving its goals. Evergreen is committed to reviewing and updating their plan each year and setting new goals based on internal needs, the changing landscape, and new demands. These things have all contributed to keeping a cohesive practice team committed to excellence, helping Evergreen's Women's Center become a best-run practice and an example that others can learn from. The secrets. 1. Uncontrolled growth can result in a loss of control and financial hardship. 2. Strategic planning puts you in charge of your future. 3. Chapter 7. The Amazingly Productive Doctor by Judy Capco. Key insight. Delegate tasks that do not require your expertise, and your productivity will climb at amazing speed. Management and productivity go hand in hand. For years, we've listened to physicians tell us how difficult it is to manage their time. They are continually and equally frustrated with not enough time and dead time, the time they are in the office, expecting to see a patient and the exam room is empty. Through many consulting experiences and years of examining medical practice operations, we have come to believe these two time problems are equally important. After all, if you don't have enough time, it is difficult to manage the time you do have. On the other hand, if you have dead time, it's cause for concern and will result in loss of productivity and less income. Optimizing the productivity of physicians and the nurse practitioners NPS, physician assistants PAS, and other clinicians on the team is vital to achieving best practice performance. Too often we see practices focus on cutting expenses in an effort to improve profits. But as you will see in this case study, focusing on enhancing productivity rather than reducing expenses can lead to better financial results. Physicians' time is often eroded because they take on things they shouldn't, things that should be the responsibility of the staff. When conducting site visits, we often have observed physicians consumed with tasks that could, with a little effort and planning, be delegated to the staff. Physicians need to ask themselves, what am I doing that eats away at my time and doesn't require my skills or judgment? When these tasks are shifted to support staff, physicians, PA, and NPs can improve their productivity, and just maybe they will actually get out of the office on time. For many physicians, delegating is easier said than done. There are a number of reasons physicians and administrators fail to delegate, some more common than others. A lack of confidence in the staff's capabilities. Failure to train employees to assume additional responsibilities. The "my way is the only way" syndrome. It's a habit that's never been addressed. Fear of losing control. Fear of compromising the outcome. Most physicians, if they set their mind to it, can delegate more and enjoy the time they gain and the benefits it brings them. When staff members are well trained and understand what the physician needs and expects from them, they keep patients moving and everyone works in real time. Working in real time means doing today's work today. This simplifies the day at the office and leaves less clinical work behind. When physicians ask what they can do to improve their time management and clinic performance, we share the experiences of a long-time client of ours. There's a lot to learn from the way this practice runs its clinic sessions and how staff members spend their time, making time count. Coastal Allergy Care, Southern California adult and pediatric allergy practice, is progressive. The practice includes 2 physicians and a full-time PA, with 3 offices strategically positioned throughout the region. Staff members always look ahead to see if they can do things better, investing in tools and technology that improve service to their patients while at the same time making their own jobs easier. When problems puzzle members of this busy practice or they feel direction is needed, they don't hesitate to seek outside help. However, when it comes to optimizing physician productivity, this practice shines, and there is much for any practice to learn from how it accomplishes this. Coastal Allergy has it wired. The smart use of ancillary staff and effective delegation make for smooth clinical flow and good physician time management. We have been amazed at the practice staff's ability to make the most of each day. This has allowed the practice to reach productivity numbers that far exceed the average allergy practice. Coastal relies on its entire clinical staff to keep the doctors and PA moving and patients cared for. They work on the day's tasks in real time so work is completed at the end of the day. Coastal orchestrates clinical sessions with incredible efficiency and productivity. This was the case long before it converted to its EHR, which gave Coastal the ability to become even more efficient. Coastal has always embraced technology ahead of most of its peers and uses the latest available technology to its fullest, which significantly contributes to greater productivity for its entire team. The clinical flow. This is how Louis Kender, MD, the practice's founder, and his clinical staff go about their day. There are 3 nurses working with the doctor during his clinic session, 2 are shadowing with him while the other is performing skin tests, providing allergy shots for other patients, and lending whatever support is needed. These nurses not only perceive the needs of the doctor, they perceive the needs of each other. One nurse picks up where the other leaves off. It's amazing to watch. It's like a dance, and it is often orchestrated with very little dialogue. It's obvious that this clinical staff is skilled and has been well trained. They are confident, know what needs to be done, and support the physician. They are working to their potential and are given the opportunity to enrich their knowledge and skills so they can better serve the practice and the patients. One nurse escorts the patient to the exam room, takes the history, and prepares the patient for the exam, documenting all this in the EHR. Computers are everywhere, in each exam room, at the nurse's station, in the doctor's offices, and in various locations in the business office so access is always available. When a doctor is ready to enter the exam room, he can be assured that needed information will be available on the patient's record. Just as important, when he goes into the exam room, a nurse will follow him. The physician reviews the history and moves on to examine the patient, at which time the nurse sits at the computer. This allows the doctor to focus entirely on the patient. As he completes the exam and talks about the findings, the nurse scribes, completing the chart documentation. This enables the patient to hear what the findings and impressions are. The process continues as the treatment plan is discussed. Studies are ordered, and prescriptions are written. When the physician completes the visit, he is able to leave the exam room, easily moving on to the next patient, accompanied by another nurse. The first nurse stays with the first patient to complete the visit and give the patient instructions. The nurse then goes on to perform whatever diagnostic tests are ordered, making sure they are captured in the chart, and sees that the patient receives the proper patient aids and education materials. This is all accomplished while the physician moves on from patient to patient, making the most of his time and using the staff to his advantage. The patients love this approach to their care. They never feel rushed, and they experience a team of people looking after their needs. New patients are often in the office for up to 2 hours, having diagnostic procedures and skin tests after the physician consultation. Patients don't mind because then they don't have to come back for a separate visit for the skin tests and will get into a treatment regimen that much sooner. In addition to describing the patient's history and exam results, nurses assume responsibility for updating the EHR with visit and diagnosis code information. This is a great approach because the nurses are in the exam room throughout the visit, hear the discussion between patient and doctor, and know exactly what services have been performed in order. When the patient reaches the exit station, charges and the instructions for scheduling the next appointment have been documented. This eliminates interruptions, reduces processes, and speeds workflow. The main facility easily accommodates the ability to glide through the office session. With 7 exam rooms and no more than 2 providers in session at the same time, it is possible to extend the patient visit to include skin tests and diagnostic studies without impeding patient flow or the physician's time. The goal is to eliminate downtime for the physicians and the PA. From a financial perspective, they are the most valuable players on the team. With a staff that keeps the flow, they are able to capitalize on this without compromising patient care or the quality of service. This model is practical and it makes sense. Everyone benefits. What does the practice gain by this team approach to patient care and physicians delegating so much in the clinical setting? For starters, more patients are seen in less time, and they aren't kept waiting. In addition, members of the staff enjoy their jobs and work well together, which is evident by their longevity. The average tenure for the nurses at Coastal Allergy is more than 10 years. This is a tribute to the physicians and the entire clinical team. Since the cost of replacing an employee is estimated to be as much as 1 year's salary, reduced turnover contributes to the bottom line. Next, patients are well informed, and it takes less time to diagnose and resolve their clinical problems. Sharing data electronically and automatically from the clinic to the front office saves time and reduces frustration. It also reduces the potential for missing charges, missed instructions, or failure to schedule a follow-up appointment. Since the physicians and staff work in real time, they are not plagued with batches of work that need to be completed at the end of the clinic session. In the end, patients and staff are more satisfied and there is greater productivity and higher profitability. Numbers talk. Overall, Coastal Allergy Care outperforms allergy practices nationwide, as demonstrated by the productivity performance measures per full-time equivalent physician shown in Table 1. Patients that generate more revenue is a smart investment. Table 1. Coastal Allergy Care productivity performance measures asterisk. Statistics. Gross charges. FT staff. Asterisk per FT physician. Coastal Allergy Care. $1,637,559 6.75. Into $1,085,020 6.09. FT equals full-time equivalent. Into equals National Society of Certified Healthcare Business Consultants www. Into or Coastal Allergy's gross charges are 51% higher than those reported by the National Society of Certified Healthcare Business Consultants. Coastal Allergy reports an additional 0.66 FT more than the average, but this slightly higher level of staffing pays off with far greater productivity. Coastal generates at least $500,000 more in per physician charges than the average reported by making the additional staff clearly worthwhile. Yes, adding staff who can help physicians see more. These impressive numbers substantiate the economic benefit Coastal Allergy enjoys due to the highly productive clinical model it employs. It's worth noting that Dr. Cantor is the highest producer for his group, yet he is only in clinic session an average of 24 hours a week. Lessons learned. Sometimes a practice focuses too much on the physician/staff ratio, when additional staff just might be the right prescription for improving practice performance and profits. When staff members are used wisely and doctors delegate more, productivity rises, resulting in healthier profits. At a time when the healthcare dollar is continually being squeezed, this is no small feat. The old adage is true. Do what you do best and leave the rest to someone else. The secrets. 1. Take a critical look at how you manage time. 2. Train staff members to meet their potential and develop a strong, cohesive team. 3. Delegate tasks that do not require your skills.